friends. It's been a hot minute. We've missed getting together and chatting. Sometimes health and family just messes with schedules, but I'm happy to be back here today. I've got Dr. Susan here. So I'm going to go ahead and run the intro and then we will get to it. We're going to be talking about summer and how to navigate summer as a person with ADHD and a parent of kids with ADHD because it can be a little rough. So I'm going to go ahead and run the intro and we'll just jump right in. Hi, I'm Nicole, and as you have probably guessed, I have ADHD. I live and breathe all things ADHD in my personal, family, and professional life. I have a background in psychology and special education, and I've gained a lot of knowledge over the years about ADHD, what it really is, how it touches every aspect of your life and the life of your child, as well as a wealth of information and strategies for living with ADHD and parenting kids with ADHD. In this community, we share stories, we learn together, and we support each other as we navigate all things ADHD. Welcome. Hello, friend.
Hello, stranger.
I know, it's been a little while.
I had COVID for 3 weeks. It was not.
Oh, no.
So did my husband and daughter. So we were down and out.
Just everybody's down and out. That's rough. I had it 2 years ago, year and a half ago, and it knocked me flat on my butt for it was rough.
This was our third bout. Not the worst. The first one was the worst, but
yeah,
we were absolutely non-functioning. But so happy to see you again.
I know.
And somehow, while we were all recovering from things, school ended and it's summer.
Yeah. It feels like it's been for a while. My kids get out of school ridiculously early. I feel like they were out like a week and a half before Memorial Day. So we're like,
well, that's really early.
They're really early.
They get out here in Colorado the week of Memorial Day.
Yeah, but I still don't feel like I have my brain quite wrapped around the fact that that they're all home. So we're still working on getting systems in place and getting things figured out.
That's what we're going to talk about today.
So, yeah, it's a good topic because I gotta get my stuff done. My older boys have had marching band until this week, and I'm involved with the fundraising. We had a huge fundraising event over the weekend. So now I feel like we can finally get into like some routines.
How do you do that? How do you set up your routines for the summer?
It has changed a little bit over the years. When my boys are younger, so my youngest still, they do swim team in the summer, which is great because it's an hour every day, Monday through Friday, all summer. So it gets us up, it gets us out of the house, it gets everyone some physical exercise, some sensory input. It gets me up and moving. I get some work done on the pool deck while they're swimming, and just kind of gives us a little bit of structure to our summer. It's changed a little bit as my older two boys are now in high school and they do marching band. So it doesn't work out for them to do swim team anymore. But my youngest is still involved in swim team. It's just been great for them. We have just kind of a local rec center swim team. So it's not super intense, but it provides that movement, that structure, really helps us to have some organization to our lives. Marching band is a little less so. They only have it a couple of days a week in June. Then they have about a month off. And then it is camps and all intense for the rest of the summer. So for the older boys, they really only have to worry about setting up some external things for about 5 weeks in the summer. So we're heading into that season right now. So it's a little different as they get a little older. They have a little more control over their schedule, but we do have some kind of basic routines and things that have to be done every day. So that structure, we do something mental, something physical, right? So I have to read a little bit every day. They've got something academic that they're working on, whether that's like one of my kids is taking a summer class so that he can take an additional music class during the school year. So in order to fit that into his schedule, he has to sometimes do some credits over the summer. So he's doing one of those for his. We try and kind of have them set a goal, right? So we've done typing skills. We've done, pick something that you want to research and just learn about it. We've done creative writing projects. We've done, but we like to have them just pick something intellectual to work on in the summer. And we kind of sit down and work on that together on what, goals we think they need to work on. Whether, my youngest right now, it is math facts. And then working on typing because he has dysgraphia, and we try and get him typing as early as we can. So we do that, and then they have a few chores they have to do around the house, keep their room picked up. They're each in charge of wiping down a bathroom because boys are disgusting, and just some basic things. So that amount of kind of their what we call level 2, there is usually they can get done in about an hour and a half for the older kids, getting some physical activity in, getting some mental stimulation that's not screens before they're allowed to kind of have free reign access.
Okay. See, we handled it kind of differently. Starting, at about age 7 or so, my kids did those weekly day camps.
Okay.
So they did athletic camps at the local university for weeks. They did some of the museum camps. Our local YMCA had different, themed weekly camps. And my kids loved those. They got to go on field trips everywhere. They got to, my son got to choose all the different sports he wanted to play. In the summer, they did, ice skating and soccer, and I can't even think of all the other ones he did. And also starting about age 8, they started doing sleepaway camps. So it started at about 10 days and then 3 weeks. And by age 10, my kids did 4 weeks and then 8 weeks of sleepaway camp every summer from age 10 until 16. So 7 years. So out of our 11-week summer break from school, they were away for 8 weeks.
Wow.
And they went
I can't
to
imagine.
those. Yeah, it was amazing. And the years, because they're 4 years apart. So the years they went, there was 4 years or so when they were both gone in the summer, and my husband and I had the house to ourselves.
Wild.
It was amazing. But we chose all around summer camps where they did some of everything. They had drama and woodworking and arts and crafts and swimming and sports. And my kids went to religious camps. So they also had prayer and learning, which was right for our family.
Sure.
And so they went to camps where they had every activity you could imagine. And they did that for 8 weeks every single summer. And then they had 3 weeks, and we spent at least a week of that on vacation. So they really just had 2 weeks where they hung out at home and did nothing at all. So our kids' lives were pretty structured from elementary through high school, in the sense of they went away to camp, away from us, which we felt really built independence
Sure.
and life skills for them. And
Mm-hmm.
for our daughter, now both my kids are twice exceptional, but especially for my daughter who had autism, we would speak to the social worker at camp every summer. We would speak to her counselors. We discussed accommodations for her. And even though her camp that she went to had a special needs program, she was not in that program, but the counselors and the social worker were told about what accommodations and supports she needed. And so
Mm-hmm.
she was given lots of support around social skills, around anxiety. Um, and she was able to live in a cabin of 10 girls and 2 counselors and participate.
So we've done a few like of the day camps and activities and things like that. And it works better for some of my kids than others. My older boys now, they do go to like a week of our church camp. And we do have some summer vacations and things that are built in. My family goes to Lake Powell. So we usually do that in the summer. But I guess maybe some advice on, because we have not found a lot of activities that work very well for one of my kids because he has some pretty significant behavioral issues that a lot of these places don't really know how to address very well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always been kind of something with all of my kids as we've picked activities, is trying to find the right fit and people who, understand them and are
Yes.
willing to work with their particular needs. But for my youngest in particular, it seems like the activities that work for him, the options have gotten a lot smaller. And there are obviously things out there that are built just for kids with autism and, but they are not always accessible for everyone financially or otherwise. So I don't know, I guess maybe some tips on how to navigate that for these kids. I mean, he's done swim team. I mean, he's started swimming. We started survival swim lessons with him when he was 7 weeks old. So he could swim the length of the pool before he could walk.
Oh my God.
And being in the water, like it is, as far as his sensory things, it is one of the best ones for him. So we've always encouraged, but we did have to leave, our local rec center swim team and go to another team that was smaller and more willing to work with him. But even there, we have had difficulties, and we've kind of been given the behavior warning of he's not going to be allowed to do this if this, that, and the other. So it can be really hard, I think, for a lot of parents to find places.
We had to
for these
address
kids.
a lot of those issues with our daughter as well. Aviva couldn't learn in group settings, not swimming, not gymnastics. She wasn't able to follow the rules in a group setting at all. And so we found private lessons were the only thing that worked. And so we started swimming. She was closer to a year. She was on oxygen until she was 5 years old.
That makes it a little trickier.
5 months old, I mean. So we didn't put her in a swimming pool yet, and she didn't have good temperature control, so her lips were turned blue. In a 20-minute lesson, she couldn't make even a 20-minute group lesson because her lips were turned blue. So we found we had to do private lessons with her. Both in swimming and then in gymnastics, which she started at about age 4. She could not follow the rules, sit still, wait her turn. She was, a big crowded gym, forget it, sensory overload. So we actually found a coach, both swimming and gymnastics, who worked with Special Olympics teams, who we could hire, and it was very inexpensive compared to physical therapy and occupational therapy,
Sure.
hire a half-hour lesson, once a week. It was much less expensive than quote unquote therapy, and did as much or more for our
Mhm.
daughter, in terms of water safety, and basic skills. And then when she did start going to camp at age 10, she had to be able to pass she had to tread water for 5 minutes, and just to be allowed in the water at camp.
Sure.
And she couldn't do that. So it was a good thing we had these private lessons for her, so she could at least pass the basic safety test and be allowed to swim at camp. And
Yeah.
then the gymnastics lessons, we did it till she was at least 12 years old, but we hired a coach who coached the local Special Olympics group, who gave us a half-hour lesson once a week. And she was allowed to participate in the quarterly recitals. And she was not very good, but she got so much self-esteem out of that she could prepare, a little floor exercise, a little beam exercise. And she learned a lot of body coordination, and her self-confidence and self-esteem got much better. So that's one of my big suggestions to families, to figure out, what is the behavioral piece? Is it that they don't learn? For example, Aviva can't learn by watching. She has to have her body moved. So you can't say, put your right hand up and your left hand down. You have to move her right hand and say, do this, and move her left arm and go like this. And you have to give special permission for coaches to touch your child. And it's very difficult to do that in a group class as well. So private lessons, which is cheaper than PT and OT,
Yes.
but she got to participate in swimming. She got to participate in swimming. She took skiing lessons, and she took private gymnastic lessons for several years. And it was tremendous for her vestibular system, her sense of balance, for her proprioceptive system, which is knowing where your body is in space. And we greatly reduced the sensory overload and all the behavior problems, because it was part of being in a group class where she couldn't wait her turn, she couldn't sit in a line, she couldn't follow directions. And so these private lessons were a lifesaver for us. And we ended up dropping PT and OT and doing private ski lessons, swim lessons, and gymnastics lessons in the community instead. And that was an absolute lifesaver. One of the other things we've learned is that what kind of sports our kids participate in is very important, so that many of our kids with ADHD and autism and nonverbal learning disability, which is one of Aviva's diagnoses, can participate in team sports, because that, for example, baseball, football, tennis, even, you have to follow the ball with your eyes, and they don't have the visual processing to do that. But individual sports, like the ones we've mentioned, gymnastics, swimming, and I already forgot the third one I said that she did. Oh, skiing. The motor planning is very different. So you don't have to coordinate hitting the ball or throwing the ball to somebody else. You're using your own body to participate in the sport. And a lot of our kids find that much easier, because they're not trying to coordinate with a piece of equipment. So finding a sport, that they don't have to, so she can rollerblade, she can use a scooter, she can ski, but she can't hit a ball with a bat to save her life. Because so individual sports versus team sports can be much more successful for our kids. And again, we reduce the sensory overload, and we reduce the behavioral issues that can be involved in trying to coordinate with other kids, turn taking, dealing with authority issues, all kinds of sensory and emotional overload issues. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we found, private places with private lesson model tend to work a little better. That was my oldest son did a martial art when he was younger, and
Martial arts is another excellent choice.
we shopped around to a lot of different places and found one that was not just a group class sort of model, right? They did private lessons with group classes that you could attend, but they weren't required. So he would do, one group class a week, and then he would do his private lessons. And that worked a lot better for him than being one of 25 kids in a group. We did, we did a lot of baseball, which my kids were extremely coordinated that way.
Lucky
But
you.
yes, but it was again shopping around for a team, for a coach that was willing to see outside the box for kids who don't necessarily look like the rest of the team, right? And that's where we did run into problems kind of with them eventually giving up baseball was um as they got older and they didn't have the same, let's say, level of passion for winning. And
Nicely said.
so other kids on the team would get frustrated with them because they were like didn't even know what the score was. They're like, I'm just here playing the game that I love to play, right? Or my one son really struggled with just doing exactly what the coach said right when he said it, because he would have kind of this background of knowledge of what his role was. Oh, when I'm in this position, I'm supposed to do this, that, and the other. And then they would tell him to do something that didn't kind of fit that. And so he'd be out there trying to figure out which, like, what I'm supposed to do
Black
this
and white
thing, and you're
thinking.
telling me to do this thing. And so he would kind of think about it and be like, well, no, that doesn't fit this. And then they would be frustrated that he didn't just immediately do what they said. So some things like that then came up later on, not when he was quite as young, but as you get to be older in the sport where they're focusing more on winning the games and less on teaching the basics and things like that. We started to have a lot of conflict, and then so we transitioned out of baseball that way. Because that team dynamic and being the kid who doesn't look like the stereotypical athlete, right? He doesn't stand at attention and stare the coaches in the face when they're giving instructions. He'd be, pacing behind and he's listening, but to them, he doesn't look like he's listening. He's not playing the role, is where it kind of got difficult. Definitely music has been huge and such a great place. Band has been a lifesaver
I'm
for
so
my
glad
kids.
you said that because creative arts, theater is a real lifesaver
Mm-hmm.
for many of our kids as well.
Yeah, lots of quirky kids to fit in with. We're incredibly lucky to have some of the best music programs in the state in our area. So it's not just the quirky kids. It's like kind of a cool thing to be part of the marching band. Our
Yeah.
marching band is,
Mm-hmm.
second or third in the state and nationally ranked, and they
It's
work
amazing.
really hard and they learn some incredible skills of how to get along with those people, other people that they may not necessarily
Be
get
part
along
of a
with, how to
team.
work really, really hard and that it isn't going to kill them. I remember the first time my older son came back from band camp and it's 12-hour days in the August Utah heat. It's 110 degrees out there. They are working so hard. And we were talking about it after the school year started, and all of a sudden his grades were so much better. He was keeping on top of his schoolwork, and I couldn't figure out why, because he now only had one day a week that he did not have marching band practice after school, right? I'm like, how are you staying on top of things when you have no time? And he said, well, it used to be really hard to do my homework. And now, like, after band camp, well, I could do anything for an hour.
I want to comment on that because the first year, so my son was 10. The first year he went to sleepaway camp for 4 weeks, so 11 when he went 8 weeks. And I went the year when he goes for 8 weeks, at the 5th week mark, parents get to come up for the weekend. So you get to visit them. And I'm messy. I'm not a great housekeeper. We have a messy house. It's clean. There's no crumbs
Right,
or
just
bugs or
clutter.
anything. It's untidy. I don't
Yeah,
put things away. Once a month or so, we do a good cleanup.
sure.
Sometimes. I mean, we're just untidy people. And I went to his cabin, and really, even unlike some of the other boys, this is an 11-year-old boy. Um, his clothes are folded and in the cubbies. His bed is made. His stuff is, tucked underneath his bunk bed. And I'm like, wow. And he's like, yeah, if I don't do this, I can't find anything. And so, really, it was a life-changing experience for him. And when he came home, he did have more of a commitment to kind of, he's still not a tidy person, but he was way better than he ever was before. And this sleepaway camp experience, and I think band camp, I hear from many clients, what it is we're teaching our kid responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And what parents don't realize, they think they're sending their kids away. It's not like a Lord of the Flies situation, for those who don't look, where they
Yeah.
all gang up on each other and threaten each other and kill each other. They don't turn into savages. But in fact, sending our kids to these kinds of camps teaches our kids responsibilities. And we all say, but we tried to teach them those things.
Yeah, but they don't learn
a lot
from
of my
us.
clients come to me because their kids don't do their chores and their parents are constantly nagging. And yet they go away to camp for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. My kids went for 8 weeks, seriously. And yet they come back because they're on a strict routine. Wake up time, clean your bathroom. They have to clean their own bathrooms. Now the boys, it was very funny because the first time he was maybe 12 or 13, I said, I need to use the bathroom in your cabin. And he said, you don't want to. It's filthy. Go use the bathroom in the dining hall. We don't, teenage boys don't clean the bathroom properly. But I could always use the bathroom in my daughter's cabin. But my son said to me, don't use our
do
bathroom.
it.
It was very funny. But he learned to, sort his own laundry and put it away in his cubbies and make his bed. And they had chores in the cabin, like, sweeping the floor. Excuse me. And they had 2 activities every morning. And they had Hebrew studies, the Jewish religious camp,
Mm-hmm.
which he adored. And then they had 2 activities, and then they had, their group meals, and they had to serve their cabin mates. They took turns, serving their cabin mates. These are teenage boys. I mean, he started doing this when he was 10 years old. And then he went back as a counselor for 3 years because he loved it so much.
Yeah.
So sending our kids, band camp is the same way. Strict routines. They got to get their cabins straightened. They have to do their laundry. They've got to show up for practice on time. They have to, those routines are strict, strict, strict. Nobody can step out of line.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important to have structure, structure, structure. And so while we think of camp as, what's the word I want? Kid time, I guess we'll say it. It's not like that at all. We're teaching our kids responsibilities that they won't listen to us as their parents necessarily, but they'll learn it in this setting because they're treated responsibly and they respond by learning responsibility in return.
And there's so much peer response, they're
Every kid
responsible
has
to
to
each
pull.
other.
No kid wants to take on somebody else's chores. They insist that each other do their share.
Right.
Great point.
Well, and with, marching
ahead.
band, we've talked about, a lot of other sport. I mean, they get PE credit. It's considered an athletic sport, right?
Cool.
they, as opposed to like the football team, right, where they have substitutes, so if you're not eligible to play that week because your grades aren't up, well, you sit the bench, but somebody else can fill your spot.
Not
And
in
marching
marching
band,
band.
there is not that. They go to
Yeah, nobody else can
competitions,
play
and
the tuba or the trombone.
well, they are in formations, right? There's 225 kids in our marching band.
Oh my God.
If there's a hole in the show, you can see it. You know that there's supposed to
Huge
be a person there,
responsibility.
and there's no one to fill in and take your spot. So
Right.
you have to be eligible with your grades. At our school, they cannot have any unexcused absences and no tardies, and they cannot have any Fs. If they have any of those in a week, they do not march that weekend. They learn, and then you're letting 224 other kids down, that they're going to get scored lower on visuals because you're not in your spot. And that has been incredibly powerful for
Right.
our kids.
And I wanted to say about theater camp, because Aviva
Mhm.
was first she did it in the summers as one of her, elective camps. And then as a teen at 12 or something, she auditioned for a
Hmm.
year-round camp. It was audition only, and she was accepted multiple years in a row. And she was played several major roles. And for a kid with autism, what she loved about theater, and I hear this again from many of my clients, is that where she couldn't read emotions appropriately herself in others, a script gives her the cues. Oh, when I say this, I'm supposed to look sad. When the other person
Mhm.
says that, I'm supposed to look mad. And so it teaches our kids ways to understand and show appropriate emotional reactions. So theater and theater camp is another fabulous outlet for our
Yeah,
kids with ADHD and autism, because it teaches them about emotions in a very structured way. But
sure.
once again, I always had to meet, and I told all my clients' parents, and we discussed how to do this with the directors who, even though they have quote unquote quirky kids, may
Mhm.
not have full-blown autistic kids that they've
Sure.
identified before and who need sensory accommodations or social accommodations. You must pre-meet with the directors, stage managers, about how to give direction. Screaming at Aviva across the stage is never going to work, because
Sure.
just like in swimming and gymnastics, she doesn't learn in group settings. She doesn't learn by being told. If you want her to walk from this side of the stage to that side of the stage, somebody's got to walk her the first time. She'll learn it immediately because she is twice exceptional and
Sure.
learns immediately. But you have to teach the staff how to teach your child. And one
Well,
of the
even
key
if
things
they
I tell
are
parents, let me
accustomed to
just finish
working.
this thought.
Yeah,
Yeah. One of the key things you have to teach staff is your child learns differently than the typical child. And if you use these strategies, your child can be super successful. Go ahead, Nicole.
well, I mean, even if they have worked with a lot of these kids, every kid with autism is one kid with autism, and it looks different. And so we have to inform the people who
Yes.
are working with their
Yeah,
kids what works for them and what doesn't.
exactly.
A lot of parents will ask, or kind of, but I don't want to give my kid that label. Should I tell teachers? Should we tell them the diagnosis, whatnot? And my answer is always absolutely, because otherwise your kid's going to get a label, and it's going to be that they're disrespectful, or it's going to be
Yes.
they're lazy. It's going to be they don't listen, when really it's just they listen differently,
And they
So
learn differently.
right. So if we keep that information, we're not helping our kid to fit in better or to not be labeled or any of
Exactly.
those things. What we're doing is setting them up for failure.
Absolutely. We only ever had, in the, I don't know, 7 years she was in this theater group, one director who wouldn't budge. Just
You
wouldn't
will
budge.
run into those.
Just like there's always one teacher who won't
Uh-huh.
listen. We can talk about
Uh-huh.
that when the school year comes around again. But
Yeah.
there was only one director who really wouldn't budge. It wasn't as successful for Aviva. But then we worked with Aviva on, how do you handle this? How do you ask for help? And what she did was she turned to her castmates who all had been working with her, knew her, and asked for help in other ways. And so that was actually a good learning experience for her. It could have been quite a disaster, but she wanted to be in the play. And so she asked for help in other ways. It wasn't as successful an experience, but we did learn some other strategies that way.
Sure.
So
yeah, and learning how to work with those kinds of people is a skill, and
It
they're
really
going
is.
to run into it forever. Of course, they have to be in a place where they are able to learn those skills. And sometimes if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. You find a different place.
Exactly. Like you said, you shop around for the right fit.
Yeah.
I wanted to shift topics just a little. Is that
Sure.
okay?
Absolutely.
So I read this fascinating article in the New York Times this weekend. That's what made me want to talk about this today.
Okay.
And it's about summer rot.
All right.
That was the phrase they used, which I had never heard of. And it's basically about letting our kids be unscheduled, underscheduled, and letting them be bored.
Okay.
And I didn't know if you had heard of this concept.
Not necessarily in those words, but
I had never heard it called that before.
I definitely have heard the conversations about, oh, are we overscheduling our kids and they don't know how to be bored? And that the topic is definitely one I'm familiar with.
So it came up in the context of, people reporting that, camp is too expensive, and which it is. There's no question.
It can be.
These 8-week camps that I sent my kids with are tens of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
I mean, I know we were privileged I went to those camps as a kid. My kids went. We were privileged to do it. No question. We had to give up on other things to let the kids do that. But I believe it was a tremendously fabulous experience. And my kids say, thank you for letting us do that. It was great. But we were privileged to do it. I know it. But there's a difference between I just can't afford it and choosing, even sending them to these week-long, there's a museum camp, there's an art camp, day camps, which a lot of people choose to do instead. Still expensive. Some of them can be several $100s a week. Yep. I sent my son to a coding camp that currently I looked up is like $700 a week, because it was a 1-week camp at a university and he loved it, but those are expensive too.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are just saying our kids are so scheduled during the school year. They have so much pressure on them with not just school, but after school activities, that let's just not schedule them in the summer. Let's make an active choice to keep them unscheduled in the summer. And maybe we'll have like a 2-week family vacation, someplace fun. But otherwise, we're going to leave our kids unscheduled on purpose. And what's the reason for this? So that's where this term summer rot came up, which I had never heard before.
Yeah.
Totally caught my attention. And basically, besides a pretty basic routine, now you mentioned giving your kids a task in the summer, like researching something. My kids, I never gave my kids any academic goals until they were in high school. They both took advanced placement classes, so they had summer work to do. And so I had to write to the summer camp and say, my kids have to, read this textbook and write a 10-page paper. So you have to give them unscheduled time to do academics, which is not typical of most kids. But since both my kids were in high achieving academic classes, they had required summer work to do. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to make accommodations for them for their required summer homework. But I never
Mm-hmm.
gave them any other academic goals. I never did before high school. But a lot of parents are apparently saying, let our kids, we grew up, our parents sent us outside to ride bikes or go to the swimming pool and, be home in time for dinner. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of parents are saying that's our choice. We're going to say to our kids, make a play date, draw, color, go ride your bikes, go to a park, be home in time for dinner. What do you think?
I think that's great if it works for you. That would not work for my kids.
Talk about that. Yeah.
Well, my kids and most kids who have brain differences like that, they not having structure and routine is extremely dysregulating. So we would have, and we do get to that point. Like we put in our structure and it works really well for about 5 or 6 weeks, and then we go on vacation and things start to fall apart, and then we have the last few weeks of summer are just absolute chaos and we're all losing our minds, and I'm just counting down the seconds till they go back to school. But it doesn't work for them and it doesn't work for me. Like my brain, I need some structure and order in our lives. So we have gone a little bit that way as my older kids have gotten older. My middle son spends most of his day now at our local skate park around the corner, which I love because I advocated with the city for 7 years to get that skate park so that I didn't have to drive my kids a half hour to the skate park and sit in the heat with them, that they could just go. And it's great. And I love that he's doing it. But when he was younger, that would not have been a good option for him. Like they need a little bit more structure, they need a little bit more supervision. They get dysregulated, they don't sleep well, they fight with each other. They spend way too much time on screens because they don't know what to. It's like a default quick hit of dopamine, right? So then we're getting in battles over how much time do they spend on screens. And so putting in that structure of we're going to do something with our brains, we're going to move our bodies, we're going to contribute to the house a little bit, we're going to do all of these things before we have access to screens. It made it so that they have less time there. And I feel like, okay, well, it's all right if they go play video games for a few hours because they've already read a book. So our family needed more structure for them, for their emotional well-being. Their anxiety goes through the roof when they don't have that structure, but also for me. So, if I know families that do that where they don't do anything, they just take it day by day and they fly by the seat of their pants, and they don't have it planned out on what day they're going to do what. They just wake up and decide today we're going to go to the water park, and that is great. I'm happy for those families, but my brain does not work that way. So I have to schedule it out. I also have my work that I need to fit into the day, so that has to be, a part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's one right solution. And so this oh, you're doing it wrong because you're overscheduling your kids, or you're doing it wrong because you're underscheduling your kids. You just have to figure out what works for your family.
I think there has to be, I think you're making two especially good points. If you have a neurodiverse mom who requires structure themselves, then this isn't going to work. And if you have neurodiverse kids who require structure to function, this isn't going to work for them.
Right.
But I think there's a place
Sure.
for time in their day for unstructured time.
Absolutely.
And with the way I think it works, so for our kids, up until high school, when I stopped monitoring it, by 10th grade or so, I had screen limits for my kids,
Mm-hmm.
pretty strict ones.
Yeah.
And so from 12 to 5 on Saturdays and Sundays, they had no screens. They had to go do something else.
Yeah.
And on school days, they got screens for their homework, and then they got 2 hours in the evenings. Mm-hmm. So they had time every day and a big chunk on the weekends where they weren't allowed access to screens.
Yeah.
And they hated me for it, but they did it. And so what a lot of the issue is here that I want to separately address. So there's this one issue of don't send them to camps, don't, schedule for them, let them figure it out. And I agree with you, this works better with neurotypical kids and parents than with neurodiverse ones. I think there's a place for it.
Sure.
The second piece is whether you have neurotypical or neurodiverse teens, I think, just like we talked about how even going to camp teaches our kids responsibility, I think there's a place, even in our neurodiverse families, for teaching our kids, and maybe our parents, how to cope with boredom.
Yes.
That a big chunk of this, especially that we have this opportunity in the summers when they don't have their regular school routine, and maybe they're going to a half-day day camp if they're younger, or they're going to a camp some weeks, but not other weeks because, they didn't have an opportunity that they wanted, or their camp was sold out, or we as parents missed the deadline back in January to get them
that is part of the problem.
Something in July.
Sign up for
I wanted to bring up reality. Right? That's reality. You had to be on that wait list back in January to get into a July or August camp. It's so annoying these days. In any case, reality is there'll be some weeks our kids don't have a program set up. I think we have to talk about how do we teach our kids to cope with boredom? And is it bad for them to be bored? And I want to say strongly, no, it's really good for them to be bored. And we can, as parents, teach our kids how to cope with boredom. And this is an excellent skill because, I left jobs because I didn't have enough work to do. And I was playing on my computer for hours a day. Mm-hmm. And I was working for the government at the time. But I didn't have enough work to do. And, you leave jobs because you're bored. You leave relationships because you're bored. I think it's just as important skill as doing laundry and doing, cleaning the bathroom and how to vacuum and, how to empty the dishwasher. How do we help our kids learn to be bored? And summer is a perfect time for that. So I have some strategies to suggest, and I'd love to hear your suggestions too, Nicole.
Yeah.
So the first strategy that I have learned about and used with my kids is a list. So the list is, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Here's a standing list. You can post it in the kitchen and in the family room or the toy room if you have younger kids and they can read, of things you can do when you're bored.
Oh, I've got one. Give me just a second. I'll pull it up. Keep talking.
Oh, perfect. I'd love to see it. And this has chores as well as play activities. And this is really important because there's always stuff to be done around the house. Everybody can run a load of towels. It takes 10 minutes to run around all the bathrooms and throw the towels into the washer and then switch them to the dryer an hour and a half later. And maybe they earn points towards a dessert or an activity if they do one of the chores on the list. Mm-hmm. And they can be really simple chores like run a load of towels or vacuum the living room or empty the dishwasher or, not difficult chores, but things that don't take a lot of time. Those things should all be on this list. Right? Then there can be sort of extra chores that are things that aren't really like everyday chores, but are something extra. I have niches in my family room where we keep china and collectibles, and they could dust them. Now that takes a lot more time because you have to take everything down, dust, clean the shelves, put everything back. But maybe I'll pay them $20 to do that. It's it's very funny, but my daughter-in-law likes to do that and comes over every couple months just to do that. She finds that very soothing to dust, and I hate dusting, so I'm happy to have her come and dust my collectibles. Obviously, the kid has to be old enough to do it safely, but you can add other, maybe sorting some books or putting things away that, books that have been pulled off the shelf need to go back on the shelf in alphabetical order. Things that are soothing and satisfying and not difficult to do. So one thing to put on your list are chores. The second thing to put on the list are easy to do activities. So we always had several arts and crafts boxes. And so we listed in the arts and crafts boxes are things to paint, or yarn crafts to do, the sand to pour, make little bottles.
My kids love those like scratch off
Oh,
pads.
we had books of those black
Mm-hmm.
pages, and you use the wood and you could scratch off and it would be glittery underneath. We had all kinds of arts and crafts workbooks. So we would say, go grab something out of the arts and crafts box. But you had to clean up after yourself to get credit. So arts and crafts box. And then go ride your bicycle or go rollerblading. My son rode a bike. My daughter rollerbladed. She couldn't ride a bike, part of her motor planning issues. There were always things on there like we have a trampoline in our backyard. We have a sitting, one of those big round sitting swings in our backyard. So fun things to do.
Mm-hmm.
You could read
All
a
right,
book.
I got a few things to look at. So we usually do kind of, you do your kind of basic chores, and then you get your 2 hours of screen time. And then if you want to earn more, we have
You
this.
enlarge it a little. I can't read it.
I can try. Let me see. Maybe.
Old eyes. If you can't, just read it to me.
Oh, that didn't do it.
That's okay. Just read it to me.
So this is extra screen time they can earn, right? So we have pick up dog poop, walk the dog, unload the dishwasher, load the dishwasher, dust a room, read for 30 minutes, take out the trash, pick up the toy room, do a learning activity, an act of service, play with your little brother.
Oh, I like that.
This is just another similar one. So we would put
cool.
in kind of, and then there was always you can always talk with your parents about any other thing. So if you have an idea, come and talk to us. And then they would also get extra tickets if they were helpful without being asked, if they were caught being kind, following directions, things like that. We would pass out these little screen time tickets. So that worked really well when they were younger.
I like that. So this is a really
Here's our I'm bored, no screen list.
That's the one I wanted, because those aren't the on board ones. Those are chores, but I can't read this at all.
Yeah, let me pull it up. I know there's a way for me to zoom in. Zoom in. Nope, that doesn't do it.
Can you pinch it with your fingers, or that doesn't work?
No, I'm on my desktop, so it doesn't pinch.
Oh, nice.
But I know there's a way to zoom in if I can find it.
Okay. Well, why don't you start reading them to me?
All right. I've got it kind of small here too, so I'm going to pull it up another window. Maybe that's what we'll do.
Yeah, because I can't
Let's try doing it this way. Let's remove that and try doing it this way. All right. Now, and then nope, that wasn't the one.
Well, since instead of wasting time, why don't you just read it? Oh, you can't read it either?
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Now I've got it bigger. Okay.
Yes, love it.
Draw, read a book, go to the skate park, go to the climbing gym, board games, Legos, create music. Night Zookeeper, which is like a creative writing online curriculum. Walk to 7-Eleven or Ridley's or Dairy Queen. Ride bikes and scooters or cruiser boards to get shaved ice. Go for a hike. Build something. Make and paint minifigures. We have a little 3D printer so they can do that. Diamond paintings, paint by number, bake something, work in the garden, declutter your room, make bracelets, perler beads, origami, crochet, sewing,
Oh,
build
this is
something with cardboard
wonderful.
tools, play outside in the sprinklers, have a water fight, take a dog for a walk, do Duolingo, listen to music, learn something new, go to the temple, sticker books, Play-Doh, play dragons, build a train track, do a puzzle, call a family member, build a fort, look for bugs, do a
Oh,
service
you don't have to read
project.
the second one. One side is enough.
On and
Well,
on.
you're on
Write
top
a
of
letter
this.
to friends or families, geocaching.
I love start a business. So you have the idea. So
Yeah.
the point of this here is I'd combine, like with my kids had everyday chores they had to do anyway. So what I put on the on board list are extra chores.
Yes.
Not their required chores, but something extra that they could do for credit.
And that's what that first list was. So we had kind of the extra chores for
extra
screen
chores.
time, and then the here you're bored. Here's some ideas of things you can do.
And what I really like about this is since my kids had 12 to 5 every Saturday and Sunday, where they weren't allowed to be on screens for any reason, that's their board time. That's they can't come and complain to me. There's nothing to do. We had a huge games closet. They could do creative play. They liked to play together. They could read. They could do any of the things, available. Lots of arts and crafts in our house.
It's just sometimes they can't think of it in the moment.
On
and
their
brain
own.
automatically goes to.
So this is the point of the on board list. And this is called recall versus recognition memory, and something that parents have a lot of difficulty with. Recall memory, and this is true of academics as well. When you have to think a thought on your own, memory can get blocked by processing issues, by anxiety, by sensory issues. Recognition memory is why multiple choice tests are easier than essay tests. When you're given a list of choices, you can recognize the correct answer and then you go, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? Adults do that all the time without realizing.
Why we need little memory cues everywhere.
So we need memory cues. And that's why we have accommodations such as equation lists and vocabulary lists in IEPs all the time, because kids' memories gets blocked. And by having these equation lists and vocabulary lists, we help trigger their recognition memory. An on-board list like this, this was an amazing one, the longest one I've ever seen, longer than mine was, is that kids can do recognition memory. Oh, I like doing this. I'll go do that activity, versus, oh my God, if I have to think about it myself. Not just that, they also get decision paralysis, where if they have to think of too much stuff themselves, they're unable to make a choice, but sometimes checking things off a list is easier. So there's many reasons why recognition memory, decision paralysis, anxiety, sensory overload, anxiety overload, while thinking of a thing to do is much harder, and giving them a list of things to do makes it much easier. Right? And this way, one of the key components here is taking the parent out of the equation. We want our kids to learn to be, here's the word we've used many times today, more independent and responsible for themselves. We don't want the parent to be the one who constantly has to make decisions for the child. We want to take the parent out of the picture and allow the child to be more responsible for making their own decisions.
And it just takes some conflict out of it, right? If they're always coming to me, what should I do? And I give them, 10 ideas and they don't want to do any of them. Now we've got, I'm frustrated with them, and you've got a whole situation here where it's just like, hey, just go look at the list. You can also, put them on popsicle sticks and stick them in a jar and they can pull one out, and
brilliant idea.
Fun that way, but taking that interaction with the parent out of the equation just sometimes makes things work a little smoother, especially if you have oppositionally defiant kids.
Exactly.
Which they do.
Right. So lots of reasons why letting our kids be bored and teaching them how to solve that boredom issue themselves is much healthier. Yeah. So we've talked about all kinds of summer stuff today. Anything to wrap up, Nicole?
Oh, I don't think so. It's just, if you need help coming up with some structures or some ideas, reach out to me or to Susan. We're happy to help you. I have your links in the description, Susan, but if you want to quickly just let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, website is drsusanblumberg.com. Schedule an appointment at callcoachsusan.com. And, whether you want to talk about longer term work or just get a question answered, please reach out.
Yep, we're always here. Leave your questions in the comments and we can address those on a future stream as well. So happy to be back.
So glad. Missed you all.
I know, it's been crazy. Feel free to reach out. I will run the outro and we will see you all next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Sounds great. Talking more about summer plans.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. This video is not a substitute for counseling, psychotherapy, medical, or mental health care. The information and advice shared here should not be used in place of any form of diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Information provided here does not involve diagnosis or treatment of medical or mental or psychological disorders. If you feel the need for professional support, please seek a local professional in your area. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only.